Joining us now is the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. He's a member of the Gang of Eight. Nice to see you, Congressman. So you've been in several briefings with members of the Trump administration about the Iran operation. Do you have a clear understanding now of what that imminent threat was that they say drove this decision to go to war with Iran on Saturday?
Well, there was no imminent threat. And let's be precise here. They like to use the word imminent, and imminent to most people means that the Iranians have lined up missiles and forces and planes and ships to attack the United States. That is absolutely not what was true, and it is absolutely not what Marco Rubio has over and over and over again said. And you don't need to take it from me. You can watch the video. Marco Rubio, and I've heard him now say it 3 or 4 times, has explained this as: we were convinced that the Israelis were going to attack Iran. We were convinced that when the Israelis attacked Iran, the Iranians would retaliate against American bases and assets in the region. And therefore, the calculus was that because Israel was going to go and because we were going to get attacked, we should attack first. The problem with that logic, of course, is that there's nothing imminent about that. And I had been under the impression that we were the greatest superpower in human history, and yet Marco Rubio's explanation suggests that we have absolutely no influence to exert on either the Israelis or on the Iranians in how they might react to an Israeli attack. So, imminent is the last attribute of what has occurred. This administration was going to do this, and they finally settled, of course, on a highly unsatisfactory explanation for why they entered into this war of choice.
And just to follow up, as you may have heard, Secretary Rubio walked that back after being pressed on it and the conflicting descriptions, including from the president, and said that his reasoning was being cherry-picked and claimed that as soon as the diplomatic talks broke down, that it was clear that action needed to be taken. I'm just noting that from his point of view. Wolf.
Yeah, there were no real diplomatic talks. You can go back and look at the record here. Witkoff and the president's son-in-law were in Geneva, and in the morning they were visiting with the Iranians, and then they were walking down the street to the Russian negotiations. As far as I can tell, there have been no diplomats, professional diplomats involved. And as it turned out, that 2 real estate tycoons moonlighting as negotiators, that is not a real negotiation.
As you know, Congressman, the Senate rejected a resolution yesterday that would have limited President Trump's war powers without permission from Congress. The resolution is also expected to fail today in the House of Representatives. What can lawmakers opposed to this war actually do to try to rein in President Trump's actions against Iran?
Well, Wolf, there's a really kind of dark answer to that question, and the answer to that is, and I hate to be this blunt and honest with the American people, but it's true. The answer to that question is nothing. Even if the War Powers Resolution were to have passed the Senate and to have passed the House, there is no reason to believe that Donald Trump would have taken that into account. He would have vetoed that resolution, right? And so what eventually is going to end this war is what we're beginning to see already just in the 4th or 5th day of this war. Gasoline prices are already up 22 cents a gallon on average across the country. They are now higher than they were when Donald Trump took office. The stock market is stumbling today. And by the way, I should have put this first, but most tragically and most importantly, there are now 6 Americans dead in this war. Eventually, the pressure of those losses in context of the administration's inability to tell us how this ends, how or when this ends, eventually the American people are going to be even more sour on this war than they already are now. And I suspect what happens then is that Donald Trump just pulls the plug, declares victory, and walks away.
I want to play, Congressman, how some members of the Republican Party have described what's going on with Iran right now. Listen and watch this.
Then we may have casualties. That often happens in war.
We're doing very well on the war front.
We set the terms of this war from start to finish.
9,000 Americans have been able to leave the region since the start of this war.
Nobody should classify this as war. It is combat operations.
I wouldn't call this a war as much as I'd call it a conflict that should be very short and sweet.
I don't know if this is technically a war.
We have declared war. So if we haven't declared war, then I don't see that. The president hasn't asked us to declare war yet, but they have declared war on us.
Do you consider it a war? It's a significant military operation.
Strategic strikes are not war.
They have declared war on us. I don't believe in the semantics. We've talked about the language this morning. We're not at war right now. We're 4 days in to a very specific, clear mission, an operation.
So, Congressman, is this a war?
Well, come on. It's a laughable question, right? And in your montage there, of course, you've got the executive branch, the Secretary of State, the President, and others saying it's a war, and members of Congress saying it's not a war. Why are they saying that? They're saying that because they know, because they took a passing glance at the United States Constitution before they promised to uphold and support it, that the Constitution is very clear that the Congress gets to declare war. That's why you have Republicans saying, like, oh, it's not a war. And look, anybody who's studied any history knows the experience of Vietnam. There was no declaration of war in Vietnam either. It was called a police action. You know, Vladimir Putin right now says that he's running a special military operation. The fact that you don't call it a war does not do away with the fact that you are brutally abnegating on your constitutional responsibility in the context of 6 Americans dead, in the context of billions of dollars of taxpayer money being spent, in the context of gasoline prices already up almost $0.25 a gallon. It is the responsibility of the Congress to at least consider whether this is wise or not. And it is shocking to me to see more than half of Congress, the Republicans, say that we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. This is not the Congress of the United States anymore, Wolf. It is the Duma, because whatever it is that the dear leader, Donald Trump, wants is what the Republicans here in the Congress are going to deliver.
Yeah, I've been calling it a war since day one, Pamela.
Yeah, and based on what you've learned since this all started, how concerned are you, given the briefings you've been given, about the prospect of Iranian sleeper cells and possible retaliation against Americans, both at home and abroad?
Pamela, there's no question that the Iranians are being very badly hit right now. Most of their Navy is gone. There's lots of almost MTV quality videos that you can watch on an hourly basis being released by the White House and by the Department of Defense. The reality is that the Iranians maintain pretty shocking military capability and asymmetric capability. That's what the fancy term for the terrorists. That they have for generations now been planting in the region and scarily outside of the region. So, as this regime gets increasingly desperate, they are going to reach for those tools at a time, by the way, when the FBI has fired the people who are Iran counterterrorism experts and whatnot. So it is a very, very real danger. And I just pray that this administration sobers up, takes their eye off of their, constant need to praise this president and actually gets into the business of defending and standing for the security of the American people.
Congressman Jim Himes, thank you.
I thank you as well, Congressman. Appreciate it very, very much.
And we're learning more, Wolf, about the 6 Americans killed in an Iranian airstrike at a makeshift operations center in Kuwait. The U.S. military has now identified all of them. This is Major Jeffrey O'Brien. He was a computer engineering graduate from Ohio State University and had been in the reserves for 17 years. His aunt described him as, quote, the sweetest blue-eyed blonde farm kid you'd ever know, adding, war is real. Loss is real. He is so missed already. Love you forever, Jeff. Major O'Brien leaves behind a wife and 3 kids.
And this is Chief Warrant Officer 3, Robert Marzan. His sister described him as a strong leader who lived by example, adding, and I'm quoting now, my baby brother, you are loved, and I will hold on to our memories and cherish them always in my heart.
The Pentagon said final positive identification by a medical examiner is still pending, but that he was present at the scene and is believed to have been killed. And the Pentagon had previously identified Captain Cody Quark, Sergeant First Class Nicole Amore, Sergeant First Class Noah Tegens, and Sergeant Declan Cody.
We send our deepest, deepest condolences to their loving families and to all of these soldiers. May they rest in peace and may their memories be a blessing.